I'm Terry Maughon, president here at Doe River Gorge, and I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. That's some of the fun we have here at Doe River. When students come, we want them to have fun. Most kids go to camp to have fun, and all of us like to have fun. Sometimes we define it on the golf course or maybe hunting or fishing, but we want kids to have a good time and a lot of laughter. Second of all, we want them to experience adventure. We want them to step beyond their boundary and discover ultimately the adventure of knowing God. And then we want kids to be accepted. We want them to know that we love them, that God loves them, that He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die for every wrong thing they've ever done or ever would do. And so we want them to experience fun, adventure, acceptance, and love. In Psalm 137:6, it says, "May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you." How many of you knew that verse? Nobody. It's there. The context of that verse is that the Babylonians have completely destroyed the city of Jerusalem and the children of Israel are in captivity. And the psalmist has vowed that he would rather lose his ability to speak, lose his ability to sing, than to forget what has happened to Israel and the city of Jerusalem, which to them represented God's presence and His promise. And the implication and application is that if they forget what is important to God, if they forget what God has done, then it would be better for their tongues to stick to the roof of their mouths. You know, it's so easy to forget what God has done. Throughout Scripture, we're reminded to remember. As a matter of fact, 164 times in the Old Testament, God's people are commanded to remember what He has done. And only when we remember what God has done can we truly magnify Him. So tonight, I want us to look back a few years and remember some of the marvelous things God has done to bring about the ministry of Doe River Gorge, things that no man or group of people could orchestrate. And I also want to share after that some of the incredible opportunities we have before us in the days ahead to impact people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to go all the way back to 1980. I was hired as a new transplant, actually by Larry Graham and some people from Grace Fellowship Church, to do nursery, preschool, elementary, junior high, senior high, and college ministry on 20 hours a week. That first year, I thought, what can we do? That we could do the fewest amount of programs that would affect the greatest amount of people. So we decided, let's do a camp. We could let the little kids be the campers, the junior hires run all the games, the senior hires be the counselors, and the college kids be the leaders. So we rented a camp here in Elizabethton, Camp Topawingo, and we ran a 1-week camp. That year, we had 20 little kids that came, and we had 7 staff members, which was my entire junior high, senior high, and college group. We ran a 1-week camp, and it was great. And actually, Mama Graham, Larry Graham's wife, taught that year, and she ended up teaching in camps for the next almost 40 years. 38 years. 28. And so that was from 1980 on up. We did it the next year, and we had about 40 campers and 20 staff. We did it the next year and had about 80 kids and 40 staff. And we outgrew the camp and moved to Greenville, Tennessee, and used the Clyde Austin 4-H Training Center. And we did that for the next 10 years in Greenville. In the process of running those 1-week camps, some people begin to say, some parents begin to say, Terry, you need to run camps for junior hires. They can't be your staff forever. And oh, by the way, you need to run camps for senior hires. So we couldn't find any places to rent. So at the encouragement of Dr. Larry Graham and Jeff Blackburn and a few others, they said, why don't we find a piece of property and find 20 or 30 acres somewhere. We'll put a few cabins on it, and we'll run several weeks of camp. So I didn't really take them very seriously, and maybe over the next few years, we looked at 2 or 3 pieces of property. And then one day, we hiked Doe River Gorge. As a matter of fact, I hiked Doe River Gorge in 1985 with Gary Gillum, who was interning in youth ministry at the church. And Gary is here tonight with his wife. And where are you, Gary? Oh, way back there. He's been a youth pastor in Atlanta. He broke a record, I think, for 30, how many years? 37 years at the same church as a youth minister. He got broke in here, see. But we hiked, and we were mesmerized by what we saw. And we got back through 3 tunnels, and sat down on the second trestle bridge, and we prayed and said, God, if there's ever to be a new camp in East Tennessee, it ought to be right here. We ran out of the gorge and talked to the caretaker and said, would the owners ever consider selling this property? And he said, absolutely not. A state senator and a wealthy businessman owned it. They're buying up all the other property around here. He said the state of Tennessee's tried to buy it. The Sierra Club's tried to buy it. Somebody offered him a blank check, and they won't even talk to him. Well, God is in the business of doing the miraculous. And 2 years later, I walked out of the law firm of Baker Worthington in Johnson City with a deed to Doe River Gorge property in one hand and a mortgage payment in the other hand, never knowing how we would make the first payment. And I want to show you the property that we bought. That's a tax map, and you can see Highway 19E there. And the red dot is about where you're sitting right now. So we were right up on the edge of the property. We didn't own anything out front. We just owned the gorge, and you can see some pictures of the gorge if you haven't been back in there. But we have almost 3 miles of property, the old abandoned railroad, 3 miles of the river. It's just a beautiful piece of property. You can see there's what the tunnel looked like when we bought the property. It was all grown over. There were trees 4 or 5 inches in diameter going up through the middle of the railroad bed. That is where the lake was at, and an old abandoned train that was here. And we were just so excited to have the property. And this is actually what it looked like. The brown building there is actually the depot that is here now. That building was built in the 60s. The trailer is where the caretaker lived. And that's about where we're sitting right now. It's where that trailer is. And the fence, you see, was the edge of the property. We didn't have anything out front, but we were excited what God had given us. So we had the property. We had no staff and no money. We had an idea. We had no idea how we would maintain it or pay for it. One day at church, a gentleman came up to me and he said, Terry, do you need a caretaker for that property? And I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, well, why don't we have lunch? We had lunch, and Wayne Muncie raised his support and came on as our very first staff member. And Wayne was here for 24 years, and he retired. And now he still comes back and leads volunteer groups after being retired for how long? 15 years. Has it been that long? And actually, he's working on a project right now with a volunteer group. Well, other volunteers came, Art Pierce and Ryan Vernon. Ryan was like 16 or 17. Art was not much older. That's Art. And first thing they did here was build a rappelling deck. And we started rappelling with kids. And then Mark Milborn, who was a student at Moody, came along and started volunteering to clear the railroad bed. And that's what the railroad bed looked like when we first moved here. And he, with a group of volunteers, Phil Raines, Steve Ike, and others, started clearing that. All those guys are still involved to this day, training. Phil Raines is from Ohio. He comes down. I think he's here tonight. Phil, are you here? He brought it. Oh, he left on Sunday. He brought a youth group here for years, and then when he retired, he came back and volunteered on the railroad. Steve Ike is here, and he's volunteered. And here he is back here, and I think they're going to move down here from Ohio in a month or so after he retires. At least that's my plans. Well, we wanted to develop a site plan. So we heard about a group called Missionary Tech Team out of Longview, Texas. And that's a group of architects, engineers, and site planners who raise their support and work as missionaries. And they agreed to work for us for $2 an hour. So we thought, well, maybe we can afford that. So they came in and began to develop a site plan. And at that time, our whole property was exposed to Highway 19E. You can barely see it. These are old pictures, but this is what the view looked like from here toward the highway. And you could see the highway, and this was like an amphitheater. The cars and trucks going by on the highway would just echo up the gorge, and they were almost louder here than they were standing next to the highway. So a missionary tech team came in and started developing a site plan, and they wanted us to develop the whole camp a mile back in the gorge. And they said, you're never going to get rid of the noise along Highway 19E. You're going to have a bad view. There's going to be development down there. They're already starting to put a sawmill there. And so we said, we want to get camps going as soon as possible. We may move back in the gorge later on, but for now, let's go ahead and put the site plan out here. And I said, couldn't we plant some trees down there or something that would block the view? And they said, well, it'd take 20 years and they still wouldn't get high enough and they would not block the noise. And then I said, well, couldn't we build a berm out there? And they said, well, number one, you probably couldn't find enough dirt to build a berm that would be 1/4 of a mile long, and it would cost you millions of dollars. Well, I knew if we had millions of dollars, we probably wouldn't build another mountain. So they went ahead and developed a site plan here. Well, there's a gentleman that ran for governor of Tennessee, and he promised that if he was elected, he would widen the highway between Valley Forge and Hampton. Now, we had a 4-lane in front of us. There was a 4-lane Elizabethton, but there was about 2.5 miles that was a 2-lane. And it was going to cost $20 million at the time to widen that highway from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And we thought it would never happen because, the 4-lane ends about 2 miles up the road anyway. And it's not like the whole world's trying to get to Hampton, Tennessee. But sure enough, about a year after he was elected, they started blasting away mountains and widening that road. And so I went down and met the foreman, and I said, you going to be moving a lot of dirt? He said, yes. I said, well, I'd like to have some. He said, well, where are you located? I said, I'm about a mile up the 4-lane. He said, well, you don't get any dirt. He said, this is a cut and fill project. We're not hauling any dirt off site. And I said, well, if you do, I'd like to have some. And he said, well, we're not. And I said, well, I'm just saying if you do. And he said, well, I just told you I'm not. And I said, well, if you do, he called me son. He said, son, do you know how much money it would cost me to put dirt in little trucks and haul it up the highway? He said, I'm not doing it. And I said, well, if you do. And he said, look, that's my cubicle. I'm busy. But if you want to write your name down, if I haul any dirt, I'll call you. So I went in his cubicle, and there was a legal pad. I wrote my name, my phone number, and I said, I'd like to have a mountain built. Well, they worked on this highway for 9 months, and then the environmentalists came in and said that the rock blasting out of the highway had acid in it, and it was going to leach into the river and cause a fish kill. So the environmentalists stopped the project for 9 months. And one day I was mowing my yard, and my wife got a phone call, and she said, you may want to come in and talk to this guy. I came in, and he said, my name's Jim Burdett. He said, you don't know me. But he said, about 18 months ago, you were in my office and talked to Ted Bumgardner, who's no longer with our company. But he said, I was going through his files, and I found a little note that said you'd like to have a mountain built. He said, is that something you're still interested in? I said, yes. He said, well, I'd like to meet with you at your convenience and talk with you about it. I said, it'd be convenient for me in 30 minutes. So he said, okay, I'll meet you at your property. So I ran in, changed clothes real quick, ran out here, because we didn't have any offices or anything here. And I picked out 2 pieces of property that was down toward the highway, and maybe you can bring that up. And I walked him over. It was 20 acres. And I said, I'd like to have a mountain built here, 1/4 mile long and as high as you can get it. And so we walked over for a couple hours, and he said, I could build this mountain. Now, what happened is the state said they had to haul all that dirt off site because they couldn't haul it, they couldn't put it against the river. So he said, I could build this for you, and we can start tomorrow. And I said, you can't do that. He said, why not? I said, well, we don't own this property. So he said, is it for sale? And I said, no, we've tried to buy it, but they won't sell it to us. But if you'll build us a mountain, I'll try to buy it again. And so it just so happened that he said, well, I've got to start moving dirt. Well, missionary tech team had been working on our site plan for a year. I got this back from them. This is a copy of it. On April 1st, Jim Burdett called me on April 10th. And I said, well, I've got a site plan here, and there's some other places I need dirt. So I walked him around the camp, and I said, we'd like to build a lake up here. And I said, we need a plateau built about 300 feet long and about 40, 50 feet wide for some rail cars I'm hoping to get donated. And there's some holes down here around, and up where the office building is, and so he said, well, I could probably put about 10,000 loads in this. And so he said, if you'll try to buy that property, I'll start building all this other. So they came in, and they worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year and a half, hauling 15 dump trucks. And they built Miracle Mountain. There it is under construction. You can see how big it is. It takes 20 acres, comes up over 100 feet above its original land elevation. They built us these ball fields. They sowed everything in grass when they were finished. They built us a lake. They graded out land on the side of the mountain for a plateau. And even when they were building the lake, one of the dump trucks turned over in the lake. You can see that there. Then they graded a 300-foot-long place where we wanted to put rail cars. It was kind of interesting, one story. We had some retired people staying up in the RV center. Wayne was managing them, and this guy came to me and he said, you would not believe how loud it is here at night. He said, it's one dump truck after the other, one after the other. He said, that rock slides out and that tailgate slams and it echoes up this gorge, one after the other after the other. He said, I fought in World War II and it wasn't this loud on the battlefield. And so I looked at him, I said, sir, I am so sorry. I said, are you able to get any sleep? He looked at me real funny and he goes, oh yeah, I don't stay awake and listen to it. And so one day, Jim Burdett called me and he said, Terry, I cannot bring any more dirt to Doe River Gorge. The mountain was supposed to be 10 foot taller than it is. He said, I can't bring a single more load. And I said, you've been running 15 dump trucks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Why not? He said, well, they just told us that the environmental report was bogus and that we didn't have to haul any dirt off-site and we just wasted about $4 million. And I said, you didn't waste it. God moves mountains. And so it... And so it created this beautiful cove back in here that's private, and all the noise from Highway 19E, the view of all the development is hidden. And God had moved that mountain. Well, we wanted sand for our lake, white sand. And most of the sand around here was brown. So I started asking around where could we get some white sand. So somebody said there's a place in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. And they mine feldspar, and the byproduct is sand, white sand. So I called the operator. This is back in the day when you called the operator, and I said, do you have a number for a feldspar corporation in Spruce Pine, North Carolina? So I got a number. I put my hand on the receiver, and I said, God, I'm going to call this place, and I need some help. And I called, the guy answered the phone. I said, do y'all sell white sand? He said, yes, we do. It's $15 a ton plus delivery. And I said, well, I really wasn't wanting to buy any. I said, I really would like to know if y'all would be open to a donation. And I said, I'm a nonprofit organization. And he said, yeah. He said, we might donate to a nonprofit. He said, I know a couple of years ago we donated to a daycare center down the road for their sandbox. He said, how much sand do you need? And I said, well, I'll write that in a proposal and send it to you if you're open to receive a proposal. He said, well, you can send a proposal, but how much do you need? And I said, well, I'll write that in the proposal. He said, well, that's fine, but how much do you need? And I said, well, I think we need about 2,000 tons. There was a long pause. And he said, 2,000 tons? He said, do you know how much sand that is? He said, and you're located where? Do you know how much it would cost you to haul that much sand? He said, what are you doing that you need that much sand? And I said, well, we're starting a camp, trying to start a camp. And this company built us a lake for free, but I need some white sand to go into it. So then I found out the guy was a believer. And I talked to him about 30 minutes, and he said, hang on a minute. He laid the phone down. I thought he'd hung up on me. Came back about 5 minutes later, and he said, if this company were to donate you 2,000 tons of white sand, do you think you could send a thank you note to the owners? And I said, I can't do much, but I can make that happen. And he said, well, that was the two owners that just walked through the office, and I asked them about it, and they said if I thought it was a worthy project, they would consider it. He said, can I come over and see your project? He drove over here the next day from Spruce Pine, North Carolina. We showed him the project, and he went back to his boss, and his boss agreed to donate us 2,000 tons of white sand. He went to the company that did the hauling for them, and the guy said, you can use my trucks if you'll just pay for the gas and the driver. And the guy said, he lets me drive his truck so you won't have to pay for the driver. This guy, every day after work, would haul one load of sand from Spruce Pine, North Carolina. He did that for the next 4 months, and all day on Saturday till he got us 2,000 tons of sand. And when I got to know the guy, he said, I've worked on the yard there for 30 years at that company. He said, I never answer the phone, but I was walking through the office that day, and the two secretaries were tied up on the other phones, so I just picked up the line. You know, what if someone else had picked up the line? God can't orchestrate. Man can't orchestrate that. It's only a God thing. And then we wanted to, we had the idea of getting some railroad cars donated that we could use for sleeping quarters. So I was told by Ralph Clark, Ralph's here tonight, to contact CSX Railroad. So I wrote a proposal about that thick and sent it to them in a 3-ring binder. I didn't hear anything for about a month, so finally I called. I was told to talk to a guy named Mr. McDonald. I finally called him, and I said, I sent you a proposal about a month ago. I said, did you get the proposal? He's a real gruff-sounding guy. He said, I got the proposal. I don't deal with that kind of stuff. I sent it to Baltimore and our headquarters up there. He said, wait a week and call Baltimore. So I waited a week. I called Baltimore. That guy said, I don't know why they sent that to me. I don't deal with that. He said, I sent it back to Jacksonville. He said, wait a week and call them. So I called this Mr. McDonald again, and I said, I understand they sent you the proposal. He said, yeah, I don't like doing this. He said, I don't know anything. Call me back tomorrow. So I called him back the next day. And I said, Mr. McDonald, this is Terry Maughon. He goes, I don't know anything. Call me back tomorrow. I called him back the next day. I said, Mr. McDonald, this is Terry Maughon with Doe River Gorge. He goes, I don't know anything. Call me back tomorrow. And he hangs up. I called him back the next day. I said, Mr. McDonald, this is Terry Maughon. He goes, I don't know anything. Call me back tomorrow. And he hangs up. So after about 2 weeks of calling him every day, I said, Mr. McDonald, this is Terry Maughon. I said, don't hang up on me. I said, I feel like I'm really bothering you. I've been calling you every day. He said, you're not bothering me. Call me back tomorrow. Boom. He hangs up. And I called him back the next day. I called him back for like 3 months. And finally I said, Mr. McDonald, don't hang up on me. I said, I've called you back for like 3 months now. I said, I really feel like I'm bothering you. You're not bothering me. Call me back tomorrow. Boom. He hangs up. I called him back almost every single day for a year. And that's when you had to pay for your every long-distance phone call. And somebody said, you must have had an expensive phone call. And I said, no, phone bill. I said, no, because we never talked over 7 seconds. And so one day I called him, and I said, Mr. McDonald, this is Terry Maughon. He said, I just got approval of those. He talked really fast. He said, I just got approval those cars are going to be donated to you. They'll be delivered 2 days. You have 2 days to get them off the tracks. And he hangs up. And I called him back. I said, Mr. McDonald, don't hang up on me. I said, did you say those were donated? He said, yes. They're going to be in Johnson City 2 days. You got 2 days to get them off the tracks. He said, we don't have a siding up there. You got to get them off the tracks. I said, how do you get railroad cars off the tracks? He said, I don't know, but you've been calling me every day for a year. I thought you'd have that figured out by now. So he told me to go over to the East Tennessee Railway. Maybe they had a siding, and I went over and talked to those guys, and they were very kind. They said, we'll pull those cars over to the siding for you. As a matter of fact, we had to move those cars to Doe River. Here's a picture. We got a guy that moved those things for $500 a car. In September of 1994, we had, the board came to me and said, Terry, we want to start camps next summer, and we want you to resign your position at Grace Fellowship Church. I'd been there for 16 years. And we want you to come on full-time at Doe River. At that time, I had my house mortgage to meet property payments here. I had a line of credit on Jeff Blackburn's house. Our lake that they had built was leaking, and the only solution was a liner that was going to cost $80,000. We'd never seen $80,000. We had 5 rusty rail cars. Wayne was our only staff member. We'd never paid anyone. We'd never done food service. We never recruited a summer staff. We never developed a brochure. We didn't have an office building. We didn't even own a stapler. And I told the board, I said, and you want to start camps in 8 months? I said, if we had $500,000 in the bank today, we couldn't start camps in 8 months. So I think this was Larry. He said, well, if you don't want to do it, we will sell the property and be done with the project. And whew, that was a hard decision. My kids had learned to like to eat at that point. So I resigned. My last day was November 30th, 1994, and we moved out. We remortgaged our property. We had $20,000 in equity, and we used it to purchase a used double-wide mobile home to be used as an office building. Actually, we're still using that, along with 3 other double-wides. The local prison brought 24 inmates a day out, along with volunteers managed by Wayne Muncie. They built our rail cars. There's the inmates. Here's a picture of the interior of the rail cars. We built teepees for kids to sleep in. And somehow our lake got a new liner at a cost of $80,000. I still don't know how that happened. And so in June, we were ready to run camp. And we ran our first overnight summer programs. And that first summer, we saw 120 kids come to know Christ as their Savior. Over the years, God has provided additional pieces of property. As a matter of fact, if you look back at our map, we were able to get, we had the Miracle Mountain property, but you see there's a big gap between us. There was 40 acres in there we didn't own. There was 75 acres up here that were getting ready to develop, and we were able to purchase that. For 12 years, we were separated. We had Miracle Mountain, but we didn't have this property between us. We were able to buy that property. And then recently, we were able to get the sawmill property that connects us to the highway. And as we've had need for property, as we've had need for money, as we've had need for staff, God has always miraculously provided. Many of you here this evening have given your time and resources over the years to make this place a reality. Now we have 3 miles of historic railroad, towering cliffs, river. We have a beautiful recreational lake. We have scenic valley. And we have amazing facilities that have been built, all of which showcases the magnificence of God's creation. And all of this property is set aside to the day the Lord returns for winning people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I know that's why all of you have invested. You have invested not for a great piece of property, but to see lives changed.
Hi, my name is Julia, and I'm from Orlando, Florida. And my first year at Doe River Gorge was in 2019. And a few months before that, I told myself that I was an atheist. I decided I wanted to no longer believe in God. So when my parents told me, "You're going to a Christian camp," I was not too excited about that. And by the time I got here, my mind was completely changed. I had so much fun. I was only 12 years old at the time, but I just felt so loved by the counselors and the people here. And the activities were just so amazing that I looked forward to coming back. And then a few years later, I came back for 17-3, which is one of their high school teen leadership programs. And I spent 2 weeks doing awesome, like, Doe River high adventure things, and I was just living the life. And then I was counting down the days till SALT. I was going into my sophomore year, and this was a huge year in my life because I left my private Christian school, which, as somebody who doesn't believe in God, I was really excited to, like, leave, you know, everything about religion behind and finally live my own life, you know. And so I came into SALT just excited for another year at camp, and I was quickly shown that that was not what I was going to get. But I was cleaning the tent, I was doing dishes, I was helping put, like, zip lines for, like, harnesses on kids for the zip line. I was like, man, I want to be doing that. Like, I want to have my fun camp year again. And I was kind of, like, bummed. But through those 3 weeks, I learned how to have a servant heart and how to lead boldly. And so I still wasn't a Christian at this point, but I went back and I was excited to go to public school. And all of a sudden, people started, like, asking me, "Julia, are you a Christian?" Like, no. Why are you asking me that? And over, people just kept coming up to me. "Are you a Christian, Julia? Are you a Christian?" And I was like, no. And so I began to wrestle. What does it mean to be a Christian? How does one become a Christian? And somebody came up to me and led me through the prayer of salvation. And I decided to give my life to Jesus. And there was no way I would have made that decision. Thank you. If it wasn't for Doe River Gorge and all of the seeds that were planted while I was a camper, I wouldn't have been at that position in my life. So I wasn't expecting much, but I gave my life to Jesus, and in that moment, my depression and anxiety were completely gone, and I was just filled with so much joy and excitement that 2 weeks later, I shared my testimony in front of all of my classes in a public school. And that was pretty crazy for me. And so through doing that, 15 girls gave their life to Jesus that day. And I was just so excited. Like, when you see 15 of your friends give your life to Jesus, you're just ready to go tell everyone else. And so I started a campus prayer movement where we would meet and just pray over our campus that God would move. And then through that, we started evangelizing during lunches. And I started discipling one girl who would then disciple another girl. And we're like, you know what, we're going to take this to another high school. And we ended up reaching every single high school in my county in Orlando, Florida. By the time that I graduated, 800 students were baptized and 1,500 gave their life to Jesus in my county. It was an incredible miracle, an incredible revival that was breaking loose in my city through the youth, and it was just an incredible thing for me to witness. But my senior year was coming to a close, and it was this time last year, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And I remembered how much Doe River poured into me, how much of a leader it made me. And I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to apply to come back as a counselor. And so I came back to Doe River, and I worked this last summer. And then it was an amazing time. The Lord just moved in mighty ways through my campers and just through the adventures that we were able to go on. And I had a great summer, so much so that I decided to come back and do Exponential, which is our 9-month gap year program. And so I've been here all year, learning from teachers and getting to work on property, doing all kinds of stuff. And through being here for the past year, the Lord has just instilled a passion in my heart for creation sciences and apologetics. I already had a passion to disciple the next generation, and now I know exactly how I want to do that. So the next few years, I'm going to be going to Liberty University, and I'll be majoring in apologetics and creation sciences in order to inspire the next generation that there is a God that created this earth, and they created every single child with a purpose and with a loving intention. And yeah, that's my testimony.
My journey to Doe River actually started about 2 years before I even came on staff for the first time. In the fall of 2023, my dad passed away from terminal colon cancer. And that was the same year that I had graduated high school and was supposed to start deciding what I wanted to do with my life. However, because of life circumstances, I had no clue what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. I felt stuck and frustrated. I ended up staying in the same job and doing the same things day after day and week after week for almost 2 more years. The place I was in was comfortable and familiar, and changing that scared me. But the thing is, God doesn't want us to be comfortable. If we're comfortable, we're not growing. God uses discomfort and hard things to shape and grow us more into his image. I finally reached a breaking point in my stage of life. I had to do something different. That led me to randomly, or in hindsight, not so randomly, search for Christian camps in East Tennessee, where I found Doe River Gorge. Looking back now, I know it was the Lord that led me here. I applied for summer staff in that spring of 2025 and got accepted onto staff. There was a moment where I almost didn't come because I was nervous about not knowing a single person or what would happen. But I'm here today to tell you that it ended up being one of the greatest decisions I've made in my life. I've never built a community or made more friends in such a short amount of time. Most of the people I now know because of Doe River feel like people I've known my whole life. I remember that just a couple hours after I arrived, I texted my mom and told her that I'd barely been here a few hours, but I already didn't want to leave. It just goes to show you that sometimes all you need to do is take a leap of faith and watch God blow you away with what he does. God used that summer to shape and stretch me in many different ways, and he revealed the next steps he wanted me to take in my life. At Doe River, I found a place where I could use my passions to serve others and bring glory to God. Doe River isn't perfect, but there's something about this place and the way God uses his creation and the staff around the camp that is impactful in so many ways. Doe River is truly a place that inspires and equips people to be passionate followers of Christ.
My name's Kara Carr, and for me, Doe River is heavily involved in my testimony. The Lord blessed me with 2 godly parents that raised me in church before I was even born. And through that, I was given the opportunity to come to Doe River at the earliest age you can possibly be here. I was here. So I don't know a summer without Doe River, and that's a lot to do with you guys who just love this place and just support us so much here. And so growing up here has been such a blessing and such a big part of my testimony. Like I said, I've been here. This will be my 11th year this summer, actually, but between being a junior camper and then going through our teen leadership programs, Doe River's really just inspired me at such a young age to just be a leader. One thing that Doe River has really taught me is how to lead boldly, and you'll hear us use that term a lot, but leading boldly at such a young age is just such a beautiful thing that the counselors just really instilled in me through Doe River. And so I went through 17-3, our 2-week program, and that summer I went to another church camp after that and gave my heart and life to the Lord, and that has a lot to do with Doe River and just how we're taught to love and how I was loved. And so growing up, I got to have that role model of being so excited to come to camp for just 6 days, just to feel the love of Christ just all around me in my life. So I did our 2-week program, and then I came back and did our 3-week program. And after that, I really just was feeling the call to just continue to come back. And there's really been no end in sight so far. I'm still here. But Doe River's really just impacted my life and my testimony so much. It's instilled in me a heart of missions. The Lord's allowed me to go to Belize and Honduras, where I've seen so many kids give their life to Christ or just find a little joy in the smallest things that we take for granted each and every day. And that's all a big part of Doe River, because the things that we learn here and the things that are poured into and discipled into us are the things that we then take out. And that's our ministry here at Doe River, is that we're discipling and we're leading and we're serving. And without Doe River, I don't know where I would have learned that. And I've just been taught where my place is in the body of Christ and how we all just play such an important role. And yeah, so now my next steps, I am attending Milligan University this coming fall to hopefully pursue a degree in nursing and continue here at Doe River. But I just don't know what I would do without this place. And from all of us, thank you guys so much for just the love and support that you show, because as you can see, it is changing lives each and every day.
Well, this is our history. These students are our history. And we never want to forget what God is doing. But now God's adding the next chapter to the Doe River Gorge story. Someone has said that about once in a lifetime comes the opportunity to be involved in some extraordinary effort for the Lord. I believe one of those rare opportunities is before us. And one of those is the Christmas Train Project. And many of you know about that. Most of you were aware that we were able to purchase the Christmas train out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we brought 57 tractor trailer loads of items from Tulsa to here, and now we're putting it all together. During the 20 years it operated in Oklahoma, they estimated that 150,000 people came to Christ through the Christmas train. And during the Christmas train here, the entire Doe River Gorge campus will be filled with festive lights, singing carolers, lots of activities, great food, and an opportunity to do some Christmas shopping. But the highlight of the evening will be riding aboard a steam locomotive train where the true story of Christmas and the gospel message will be told from the creation of the world to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, using 43 storyboards, an audio and musical background, and 3 live scenes. And it'll be like riding through a life-size storybook. One thing we're planning to do is take these 46 scenes and put them together in a children's storybook. We're going to have audio for different age groups. And one of them, with a little help of AI, we did one of the books will be a Dr. Seuss version. In the beginning, before here or there, before stars in the sky or birds in the air, there wasn't a mountain, a tree, or a light, just God in the dark and the deep silent night. And then another one of the stories, and actually this is one of the storyboards that you see to my left that you will see as you go around on the train. We have 43 of these. This is one of God creating the animals. And the Dr. Seuss version says, he made fuzzy sheep and stripedy zebras, tall stretchy giraffes and wiggly amoebas. And then it goes on the creation of man. It says, then God did something especially grand. He scooped up some sand in his mighty big hand. He formed a man, then breathed just like that. Adam blinked twice and said, where am I at? But can you imagine reading those storybooks from creation to resurrection to your kids or your grandkids, and then saying, how would you like to go ride through a life-size storybook? And I think we're going to have something nobody else has in the country. The Christmas Train Project is providing facilities that will be used not only at Christmas, but throughout the rest of the year to enhance all of our existing ministries. And one of those things is a new dining hall. For 30 years, we've dined under big top tents, and they're great unless the wind's blowing, or if it's too hot or too cold, or if it's raining hard, or if it's lightning. Other than that, they're great. So we will have a new dining hall, a new kitchen. Our kitchen staff, they make sometimes up to 900 meals a day in a 800 square foot kitchen, and they've threatened mutiny if I bring one more kid through here. And also, you can see how our campus is being transformed through the Christmas Train Project. New railroad tracks, new roads, new parking lots. And I want to thank Baker Construction. They have gone beyond anything you could imagine in helping us make this happen. So thank you, Baker Construction. The Christmas Train Project is also providing infrastructure for future ministries. We want to take our old maintenance building and build a new camp, a children's camp, where we would pick up kids on the highway, bring them in on the train, and have a great day camp experience. We think we can win another 1,000 kids a summer with that, and it takes very little to get that going. Another recent discovery is something we want to tell you about, which is an amazing discovery and opportunity. I'm going to introduce Michael Maughon.
Yeah, so a huge thing that I love is studying God's creation. When I was questioning whether I believed in God, God used what he has made to inspire me and to fall in love with him again. And so since I started working here in 2017, I've been working with God's creation and showing it to other people, mainly with the animals. And I've also been passionate about figuring out how we can use what God's given us here to show his glory and just proclaim his name and show the evidence of God's word. And so about 2 years ago, if anybody of y'all know, rocks are hard. They're super confusing, and to figure out what you're looking at, you need to know what you're looking at. And to find someone who studies geology from a creationist point of view, looking at the Bible, is pretty hard to find. But God provided someone, Troy Smith right here. About 2 years ago, we got connected, and he's been studying the gorge, and he's found about 20 sites, something like that, back in the gorge that are incredible evidence of the flood of Noah's day. And so we are working on some cool projects with that, but one of the things we found is Scolithis fossils, and I'm going to let Troy tell you what that is.
So what you're looking at is a picture from the gorge. You can go up there and see that. It's not too far up past the first tunnel. The name of that is called Scolithis, as Michael had said, and it's known as the stone worm. And what it is actually a marine organism, a marine worm that lived in that sand just before the start of the flood. It was in a sandy beach environment, much like you go to the ocean today, right in that intertidal zone. Before the flood began, the oceans looked much different. They were much shallower than they are today. And these worms were living on that beach. But then as the events of the flood started to take place, the great deep was broken up, the rains began to come, the flooding began actually in the sea, not on the land. It rose up onto the land, and as it did so, it brought in more sand, and it buried those worms. Now what we have is evidence of this worm. It's a very common trace fossil, and it is found worldwide on every continent at the same moment in time. It is evidence of a worldwide flood, a worldwide event where the elevation of the oceans rose and it eroded the land, and that sand became too much for those worms. They died. Now, we don't have the fossilized worms in those tubes. We just have the tombs, just the tubes that are there that are just the evidence of their existence. But they, as I said, they are found at the bottom of the Grand Canyon in that Tapeats sandstone that many of you have heard about over the years. Well, the equivalent to the Tapeats sandstone is right here in the gorge. And we find not only in the bottom of the Grand Canyon this Scolithis, but we also find it here. It is very common, as it turns out, worldwide. It is very common in the Appalachian Mountains. You can find it from Georgia up through Tennessee, on up into Virginia, and up into Pennsylvania. But I just wanted to read a list of other places as well. It is found, as I said, in the Grand Canyon, in the Appalachian Mountains. It's found in Canada. It's found in Argentina. It's found in Bolivia. It's found in Spain. It's found in Poland. It's found in Namibia. It's found in Morocco and in Egypt. It is found in the Taran Basin in China, as well as the Northern Territory of Australia. And one of the most amazing things to me is it's found at the top of the Trans-Antarctic Mountains in Antarctica. The same sandstone, the same moment in time, worldwide. And yet many evolutionists deny that this was from one single event. We know the truth, and the evidence is right here in the gorge.
Much, Troy. He's put in a ton of work, and he's found some incredible things back in the gorge that most people would look at and be like, what is that? It's a rock. But he's studied, he knows. He has also had his work affirmed by one of the top creation geologists in the world. They came out from ICR and they affirmed that man in everything he's done. He's done a really good job and he's done it right. So he's been such a blessing for this project. And This project is also leading to more stuff, being able to utilize what God has given us here to just proclaim his word and show people the evidence. We want to inspire and equip people to be passionate followers of Christ. And one way we want to do that is through God's creation. He's made it clear that he created it. And we have evidence of the flood. We have evidence of his creation in our animals. So many really cool things we're going to be able to utilize. And so to show people the evidence back in the gorge, we're starting creation rail tours. Mark, if you don't mind playing our video. So we have a really amazing team here. We bought a rail bike, but we weren't super happy with it. And Mark's like, I can build one better. And that man is brilliant. Really cool. He designed and he started building our rail bikes. They are going to be really, really nice. And people are going to get to pedal up into the gorge, into God's beautiful creation. They're going to get to hear on an audio tour the history of the railroad. And they're also going to get to see the evidence of the global flood of Noah's day on an audio tour. So as they go up, they'll be able to press a button and hear this tour and see all the stuff that God has made and just stuff to affirm God's word and what we know is true.
All of this is one of the rare opportunities we have to make an extraordinary effort for the Lord, an effort that will have an immediate impact upon the kingdom of God and an effort that will last for generations. One geologist said to me, you have on your property what people go to museums to see, and you need to use it to impact lives. A study done several years ago that you may have seen me use in a banquet said that 80% of all Christian students who went to a secular university had lost their faith by the time they graduate. Well, I saw a more recent study that found that only 60% of church kids will abandon their faith by the time they graduate. So that tells me we're making progress in helping students stand for their faith. And I believe the reason we're making progress is because we're no longer just telling students what to believe, but we're giving them evidence of what to believe. We're partnering with ministries like the Creation Museum, the Ark, the Wonder Center, which is the largest creation museum in the world, the Institute in Creation Research in Dallas, and Canopy Ministries. And we're giving students evidence that validates their faith and validates the truth of God's word. We're providing them with historical evidence, archaeological evidence, geological evidence, evidence of fulfilled prophecies, and evidence of changed lives, all that validates their faith. They now know how to answer their professors when they're taught ungodly philosophies. So with the property and staff God has given us, Doe River Gorge is uniquely positioned to impact thousands of lives and magnify the Lord as never before. But we need your help. So let me leave you with this challenge from Psalm 34:3. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together.